YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back with another episode of Hot Take Thursday here, taking a look at bold predictions sent in by you guys for week 2 of the NFL here. We'll take a look at all these. I grabbed a chunk of them. I know a lot of you sent in some good bold predictions, so we're gonna do this every single week. So another reason to follow the Twitter there. But I'll take a look at these bold predictions and give you my thoughts. Maybe they're pretty hot in my opinion. Maybe they're realistic. See if they can actually happen here in week 2. So we'll take a look at all of these. Follow that Twitter to kind of play along here. But we got all kinds of NFL content as well. They're on that Twitter constantly talking, especially during live games. We got a Thursday night ball game tonight, so you're going to want to follow that Twitter. Turn notifications on. Instagram, podcast, Patreon, link in the description for all of those things. And we're trying to reach that 60K goal somewhat soon. We much appreciate if you can subscribe. Full NFL coverage here. Weekly predictions for every game, score predictions, and power rankings. Videos like these, we got you covered here. Right before we get started, let's take a look at the Patreon, what's going on there. A lot of action. A lot of action here. I got my score predictions on YouTube, but Junior has his score predictions on the Patreon. I got my locks of the week, so that's spread picks, over-under picks, straight-up locks, things like those will be on the Patreon. I got my college football score predictions. Updated playoff predictions will start a few weeks down the road here, and then we'll continue to update those every single week. Bonus content, Discord access, plenty more always being added, so that's what is going on there on the Patreon. Link down below. Be much appreciated if you could check it out. But, yeah, so I'm going to tweet this out pretty much every Thursday morning here, and I want you guys to comment there on some bold predictions. I pick out my favorite ones here that I see, and there's a lot of people getting involved, so I'd love to see it. Really appreciate the support. So sometimes I don't see all of these, or sometimes people are sending them in as I'm recording this. So I picked a chunk of them here. We're going to break them down. Let's take a look at the first one we got from Keegan Jones. Justin Herbert takes over at some point this week after Tyrod can't get the offense anywhere. This is an interesting one. They chose to go with Tyrod Taylor week 1. I guess somewhat questionable, but yeah, maybe he gives them the better shot to win right away. But Herbert, I like them, to get him going, developing him. But I don't think they do this, but I think this is the time. It's now or never, in my opinion. I don't know what they got planned, but in my opinion, it's now or never, because I don't want them to throw in Justin Herbert if they're in an 0-4 situation, 1-5, whatever the heck it might be. I don't want them to throw Justin Herbert. That's a high percentage failure rate right there in that situation, in my opinion, based on the past. So I wouldn't want to do that. So now is the time. They could be getting beat pretty bad by the Chiefs, and maybe it could be just almost like garbage time, and they can throw them in. So that's why this is a tough one here. I'm actually gonna say hot. That's a hot take here because I think they want to roll with Tyrod Taylor. I really don't think they want to put Justin Herbert in, but again, it's somewhat realistic because I think they could. Again, I think it could be like garbage time, and maybe it won't be because Tyrod can't get anything going. Maybe it will be because the game's pretty much over and they want to get Justin Herbert some reps. So I can kind of see it that way. Pretty hot take though. We'll see if it happens. Next one we got from the old Meister. Jimmy Garoppolo throws 3 picks against the Jets, one of which is a pick 6. We saw Jimmy struggle quite a bit last week against the Cardinals. Kind of cost them the game there, in my opinion. And I thought he was kind of fortunate to not throw a couple picks there, in that game. He was a little off target. What I'm getting to, I think a little rusty. Maybe turns around this week. That'd be my prediction. I'm gonna say this is piping. That's piping hot there because, I think against that Jets team, I don't know if they really have anybody that can really take the ball away, interception-wise. Ashton Davis could be a guy that they drafted for that reason, but we're not going to see a whole bunch of him, obviously, yet. But, and one's got to be a pick 6. That's pretty piping. I think Jimmy Garoppolo turns around, gets it going this week. We got another Jimmy Garoppolo one from 49ers Media. Jimmy Garoppolo throws a four touchdowns versus the Jets and has a field day. 4 touchdowns, quite a bit. That's 28 points there from. You know what? I'm gonna say it's a little hot because we're getting specific. 4 touchdowns, has a field day, but I think it's definitely a realistic, and that is because I am predicting Jimmy to kind of figure it out this week. Bounce back basically. Going against the Jets, a lot of guys hurt on the Jets. They're weak at the corner position. Obviously, Jamal Adams isn't there anymore. But I think the Jets could do a decent job starting to run, maybe more than decent. We see them kind of stop the Bills running back duo last week in terms of, on the ground game. And they got a pretty good D-line over there, some solid linebackers as well. So the Jets do a good job against the run, so that'll kind of force the 49ers to throw, and I think they'll have more success throwing the ball. So I think he actually could have this field day. It's a little hot because it's specific here, but I was deciding between, we got piping hot, we got realistic hot, and we got warm. Between that warm and realistic hot section there for this one. So we got 2 Jimmy Garoppolos in a row there. From Zach here, Benny Snell is the league's leading rusher at the end of the week, at the end of week 2 here. Unless Connor is fully healthy and gets going, that's understandable. But we'll just say Benny Snell's the league's leading rusher at the end of the week. End of week 2 here. He is up there with Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Derrick Henry, after 1, which is pretty impressive because he didn't even start the game. They are playing the Broncos. He's not far off. So you would think it's pretty realistic because he's not far off, but I'm actually still I'm gonna call this pretty piping here. I'm gonna call piping. Thought about hot here, but that is because Edwards-Helaire's got a pretty good lead. But I look at Derrick Henry, right there at the top, and he is going against the Jaguars this week. I think Derrick Henry has a pretty good day. And I think, I put my money on Derrick Henry leading the league in rushing after this week. So Benny Snell has to have that big game again. He has to pass Derrick Henry and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And keep in mind they're playing the Broncos. The Broncos, even though Derrick Henry had a lot of yards, and we're talking about Derrick Henry, by the way, but even though he had a lot of yards, it took a lot of carries. He wasn't really getting the best average. So what I'm getting to is the Broncos got a pretty good run defense here. So it may be a little tough for Benny Snell, but he looked impressive in week 1. He looked like he slimmed down a bit, got a little more, speed, quickness to him. So I love to see that because that was kind of his only knock out of Kentucky. He had a great tape. He had, even for a bigger strength guy, he had, the moves, obviously some good jukes, able to spin, and we knew he had some power there. It was just kind of lacking the speed. So he's adding that. He's coming for James Conner. I like me some James Conner, but he's coming for him. So that's interesting too. And it's good to have Benny Snell because, Connor has those injuries pop up already here before, even halftime in week 1, unfortunately. So, but I'm going to go piping. Maybe that's bold of me saying piping because Benny Snell is not, he's not far off there, but passing Derrick Henry and Edwards-Helaire, I should say, is the challenge there. Moving on to the next one. Callum here. Big Ben, more rushing yards than Melvin Gordon. Interesting one. I like this one. We still got it. We still got to go piping. We got to go piping here. There's really no other option than piping for this one. It's piping hot, ladies and gentlemen. But I like it because the Steelers' run defense was ridiculous. That was one of the better run defensive performances I've seen in some time. And that was against who? It was against Saquon Barkley in the Giants. And the Giants, you kind of figured out a pretty solid run blocking offensive line, not so much pass protection. It was kind of the opposite. Maybe that's the thing that's going to continue. Maybe it's not because week 1 random things happen. But anyway, Steelers run defense, fantastic. Now they're going against the Broncos, Melvin Gordon, no Phillip Lindsay to help. It's pretty much Melvin Gordon, maybe some Royce Freeman. And the Steelers could shut down Melvin Gordon. And we've seen Melvin Gordon with the fumbling issues last year. We've seen him in week 1 kind of cost the Broncos with a fumble. So maybe he doesn't get an insane amount of carries against the Steelers defensive line because they're worried about him fumbling. That's a maybe. And they kind of roll with him a bit. But then the question would be Big Ben has to get more yards. You have to go piping here because it's really unlikely. But I like it, and at the same time of being piping, it's a little realistic, maybe a little bit there. So that's a pretty good one that Callum came up with here. Definitely interesting to watch. But I think Melvin Gordon has a better rushing day than what we saw Saquon Barkley. That's really no knock. We know Barkley's better. But that was interesting. Maybe the Steelers, we know the defense can be that good. It's really not as surprising. But that run defense performance, ridiculous in week 1. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. Not so much that he thinks Big Ben's going to get an insane amount of yards. Ahmad Salam here. Aaron Rodgers throws for over 400 yards against the Lions. he was pretty much there against the Vikings. It felt like he was thrown all over them. And then, I think a similar situation against the Lions. Probably a little stronger at corner. Pass rush, probably the same, which the pressure was non-existent against Rodgers, even though he's getting the ball out quick. I think, after watching the tape maybe against, the Lions may watch the tape, what the Vikings did, they may figure out a better solution for Devontae Adams. It's a guy you might have to bracket, me almost meaning like a double team. But yeah, maybe not like a man coverage all the time, two guys on him. But yeah, more like a bracket where they got somebody over the top of him, basically two guys on him. So I don't know if he definitely can get to 400. I'm gonna say hot. Probably it's unlikely, but Rodgers very capable, and against the Lions defense as well. We've seen Trubisky kind of go on a tear in the fourth quarter, and that's Trubisky. So I'm gonna say hot, but I think they slow down Adams a little bit. Still a good day. We got another Packers one here. From Premicist here, when week 2 is all done with, the Packers will still have the number 1 scoring offense in the league, and Adams will lead the league in receiving yards. So it seems pretty specific here, but I think, trying to decide here, I think I'm actually gonna say that's warm, meaning that is as realistic as it could be here. I don't have a cold label because I probably wouldn't, if I saw like a cold take, I probably wouldn't plug it in here. So this is kind of the closest to cold it gets, I think. And maybe that's a little bold of me because that's two specific things here, but I think this is very realistic. So think of warm as pretty darn realistic for a bold take. I think the Packers will put up points again, but you never know, though. You can't really have takeaways off week 1. Obviously, the takeaway off week 1 would be the Packers may be back to having one of the better, maybe the best offense in football after that performance. And then maybe that just doesn't happen again because week 1's weird, but there's really nothing that tells me it won't happen again, or maybe I'm not saying they get 40 whatever points again, but not too far off. So I'm going to say that it's pretty darn realistic there for that one with the Packers. Next, Tony Benz, Ravens get 3 turnovers. That defense looked very good against the Browns. Now they go against the Texans. It's a tough one because the Ravens are very capable of getting 3 turnovers on this defense. Very good defense, with their surprise blitzes. Very good at disguising those blitzes, and that kind of can shock Deshaun Watson. It could be a surprise to him. It could create a hurry. It could create an interception. You take a look at the secondary. They have the secondary. Marcus Peters is an absolute playmaker back there. They have the secondary, the pieces back there to get that turnover. I'm still gonna say this is piping though. Again, Ravens, they have the pieces. They have the scheme. They're very capable of doing this, but 3 against Deshaun Watson, maybe there's a fumble or whatever from David Johnson. I think 2 is. I think if it was 2, we almost can go to realistic there. I think there's a pretty big difference, even though it's 1. I think there's a pretty big difference between 2 and 3. I don't see the Texans, led by Deshaun Watson, turn the ball over 3 times, but even though it's piping, it's somewhat realistic there. Next one we got from Dust Dynasty. The Falcons won't be complete ass on Sunday. That's piping. I'm kidding. The Falcons won't be complete ass. I think. I was gonna put. That's a tough one actually. I was gonna go straight for that warm. Because I think they'll put. I have them losing against the Cowboys, but I think they'll put up a good fight. That game can go either way. But at the same time, my problem with the Falcons is starting off slow. And maybe a little bit of the defense, but starting off slow offensively, which it seems to be a trend. And it's something they got to fix. And if they do that again, I might call them complete ass. So I don't know. I might call them ass. I won't call them complete ass. So we'll go at warm here. They should put up a fight against the Cowboys. I like that one though. Next, Justin Miller, also known as Danny Provolone, Trubisky touchdown leader heading into week 3. Trubisky actually has 3 touchdowns, and the leader has 4. He's not too. There's quite a few guys up there, but he's not too far off. I'm not really a big believer in Trubisky. Therefore, I'm not a huge believer in the Bears' offense, even though they got some weapons there. I do like their defense as well, but that's besides the point here. So as you can tell, I'm not a Trubisky guy. And I did pick the Giants, But I do worry about a little bit about the Giants defense. Specifically, I talked about this in my score predictions video. The Giants were not disguising their defense well. When they were rolling man coverage, they went a whole drive with man coverage. They did a lot of that. I think Trubisky actually can play well against the man coverage. I'm assuming the Giants can game plan correctly, and they'll be running a lot of zone, and they will try to disguise a little better. I'm assuming that. But if they do the same stuff as last week, Trubisky actually had a pretty big day. Allen Robinson, Anthony Miller could be very good against the man coverage there. I don't know if the Bears run wild, so yeah, that could lead to Trubisky. You know what? I'm thinking about this one. I think this is it's still hot, but I'm actually this is tough. I'm actually going to go realistic. I'm actually going to call it realistic here. It's hot. It's Mitchell Trubisky. It's only week 2. It would only be after week 2. So that wouldn't be something we can overreact about, but it would be impressive. But I'm going to say realistic because if the Bears win this game, and it's a toss-up game in my opinion, if they win, and you tell me right now they won this game, you can see the future, they won this game, I'm going to tell you Trubisky had a pretty good day throwing, and I'm guessing the Giants kind of, the lack of disguises and ran a lot of man coverage, and that's what the Bears can beat. So that would make sense. And again, he's only one off the top there, and he could throw 3 or 4 touchdowns in this game. He can do it. I'm not a huge fan of his games, but sometimes he gets kind of hot. We see him in the fourth quarter against the Lions. Maybe that's bold. Another one that's kind of bold by me to think it's somewhat realistic, but it's still pretty darn hot. I almost went with hot there, just hot, but I think it's possible, actually. I think it is. From Alex RS, Jets fire Gase after humiliation from Niners. Very realistic they can be humiliated by the Niners there. But, yeah, I've kind of talked about this during the week. I'm going to say piping, and I think they kind of came out and said they really believe in Gase, and like they not really on thin ice right now. It's just one game, and they know they're going to play a really tough team, the Niners, this week. So I don't think there's really any thought. I could be wrong, but I'm confident there's really no thought. It kind of going back to when they hired Gase. They obviously they liked him. They were confident to give it time to let him grow with Sam Darnold, this young group. They're still not in square one of the rebuild stage, but they're still in there somewhere. They're still in that rebuild group somewhere, just not all the way at the bottom to start. So they're going to give this time. They know Darnold's kind of he's still kind of a prospect a little bit. So they're going to give it time. But then, the way to debate that, to argue against that, is that front office is gone. So how much say did they have in that when they hired Adam Gase? But then the argument against that is Gase kind of took over. Gase is kind of the leader because the ownership really believed in him a lot. And I think he played a part in getting that new front office. And I guess it factors in how does this new front office feel. But it feels like Gase has more control than everybody thinks, which is very concerning. So I don't think he's even fired this year. I think they give him more of a shot. I think next year is when he's really going to be on where he's going to be on the hot seat, thin ice there. So I'm going to say that's piping. Next from Garrett, Steelers hold the Broncos to under 10 points, and I'm going to say this is realistic, but it's still pretty hot. I think it's very possible. That's a really good defense. The Giants were actually moving the ball pretty well. The Steelers ended up holding them to little points there, and but they could have had more points based on the yardage. But we talked about the run defense. Run defense was great. But what I'm saying, the Broncos have a pretty similar style offense, similar system as the Giants. I think they'll be able to move the ball. I think they'll be able to get the ball in. But 10 points is realistic because I think they can make them one-dimensional. They can stop the run. So it is realistic, but I'm gonna say they get more than one touchdown here, and that would put it over 10 points. It's close to being warm here. It's feeling a little warm on it, getting close. But we're gonna call it realistic hot for now because I think they get a little more. But 10 points would be it's definitely possible. Definitely possible. It'd be a heck of a performance from the Steelers defense, but it's almost expected. It's almost expected from that defense. Next, we got from Sammy G. Cam throws for 3 touchdowns and rushes for 1. Totally no bias. All right. So Cam Newton, Sunday Night Football at Seattle, throws for 3 touchdowns, rushes for 1. So that is Cam Newton, without the running backs getting a touchdown, factoring that in. Cam Newton actually does rushes for 1, run of the 3. Okay, no, throws for 3 touchdowns, rushes for 1. So that's 28 points from Cam Newton alone there. I'm going to say, that's tough. I think the Seahawks do pretty well stopping the run on him. I think that's what Jamal Adams is for. But he only has 1 rushing touchdown. I think that's very realistic. 3 throwing touchdowns. I think it's possible. That's 4 touchdowns. I'm gonna say it's piping. Thought about going hot there, but I think that's pretty. It's tough. It's borderline hot, piping hot. I like the Seahawks defense a lot. I think they'll make the Patriots kind of one-dimensional. I think Jamal Adams kind of being there is the key for that. We'll see if that works. But yeah, I think it's going to take a lot for Cam to do that. But yeah, maybe the lack of edge rush for the Seahawks helps Cam get thrown passing the ball. We will see. That's kind of borderline hot there. That's a tough one. Still thinking about that one. Last one, Luke Baumgartner here. Dwayne Haskins outperforms Kyler Murray in a shootout, throwing at least 350 yards. You had me with the Dwayne Haskins outperforms Kyler Murray in a shootout. Not that I think that happens. I think it'll be kind of low scoring, and I think Kyler Murray probably outperforms him. But I think that's somewhat realistic. But then you kind of get me with the throwing at least 350 yards. So I think that's got piping all over it right there. Haskins, I like Haskins. I think people were sleeping on him. They looked at his first couple games last year statistically. People with their stats, too worried about the stats, seeing a bunch of interceptions to start before he even threw a touchdown. And I think that kind of made people write him off, which was totally wrong. So I think Haskins really gets going. I think we even saw him get going second half of the last game. I think he gets going, at some point this year. I think nothing crazy for him this game. I think more of a defensive game. So to me, that's piping. But that's where we end this video here. Appreciate everyone for playing along. I know a lot of other people sent theirs in. I apologize if I didn't use yours. I'm looking for, kind of get an idea which type of the ones I'm looking for. Some people will give me like multiple in one tweet. I like some of those, but I would kind of prefer like maybe 1, maybe 2 maximum, but 1 there. And we'll keep doing this every week. So you're going to want to follow that Twitter link down below to kind of play along. We're doing more videos like this where you guys kind of get shout outs and can play along. We also got our full NFL coverage with our predictions, power rankings, score predictions, plenty more. So hopefully you can join us. Hopefully you liked the video if you enjoyed it. But that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.